God bless you, Barricade. My brother. Look here, Hugh Masekela was real big in L.A. and also Mary Makiba. Back in the 60s, they were big in L.A. And Harry Belafonte. It was interesting that Harry Belafonte told Hugh Masekela that he wanted him to do his own original stuff instead of being like, because Hugh Masekela wanted to be with Miles and Freddie and Lee Morgan, who were the baddest truckers there ever was. Detroit is no different than South Africa.
Right.
You spoke about less than 3% ownership.
Yeah.
No change. Even when Mandela became president, there was no change. Mandela pardoned all the white racists, massacred terrorists, and the whites raped the land, the minerals, and gold and silver and iron. I mean, it's the same story. We're having that here with Mike Duggan. It's the same story. Mike Duggan is worse than Trump, Donald Duck, and any of them. That Democrat that was partially responsible for hepatitis A. He was in on the school takeover. He stole $500 billion from school bond money and the budget of $3 billion at one time. Just Mickey Mouse.
All right, thank you. Let me move on. Morris Dees yesterday spoke at Detroit Unity Temple in Detroit. Morris Dees is a civil rights lawyer, prominent civil rights lawyer, a giant, a legal giant, if you will. He's a co-founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is the preeminent organization in the nation that documents hate crimes. They track white supremacists. They track the KKK. I mean, they're the biggest pawn in the flesh as far as the KKK is concerned. Morris Dees is a name that really creates fear in the KKK, white supremacist movement, and so forth. And so he was in Detroit yesterday. He spoke at Detroit Unity Temple to kick off their Black History Celebration series. I was there in the audience, and later, of course, I was invited by the pastor, Reverend Gregory Guys, to join him and Morris Dees for a lunch later that afternoon. But here is the message, part of the message that Morris Dees gave yesterday at Detroit Unity Temple. Take a listen.
The church was bombed in Birmingham to kill those 4 girls, and this was the next Sunday. As I sat around in 1963 thinking, what was I going to do? Practicing law, I hadn't done really a whole lot of civil rights stuff. I continued my talk by saying one of our Baptist churches suffered some great damage this last week. People said, that's wonderful. They didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, you know, we need a little money to fix the repair work. Everybody said amen again. And I said, I'm talking about the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. Well, I think every head in there kind of turned whiter than it was. But one of them stood up in the back and she said, Mr. Dees, she called me. She said, we know all about that, but let's don't get into that business. That's not our business. Yeah, anyway, I said, well, let's just say a prayer. And I bowed my head up front and said a prayer. And when I opened my eyes, there was nobody in that church that walked out. And I actually walked out too. I didn't know about unity, and I didn't know much about Unitarians and any other thing, but I circled around and finally found the Unitarian group in Montgomery, and I know unity well. And you're wonderful people because it's meant a lot to me personally. We all have mentors. In this room, there are mentors to others. Rabbi, was he? Minister was he? You know, they're mentors. Others. And I guess if I'm a mentor, it's my 5th and 6th grade teacher that in the school. The school is no longer open anymore. It's finally closed. It's a county school, and Mrs. Mirabelle Johnson was a wonderful lady. She was single, and she lived in the schoolhouse for teachers up on Hill High School, and every morning she would take her class and the other classes in that school, all 50 of us, and we stood out by the gravel road that ran in front of the school and raised the flag upon the flagpole. and we pledge allegiance to the flag. And I remember then putting my hand on my heart as the words repeated again and again. And I could look out across the cotton fields away and see the African American children out there picking cotton while I was in school. And we came back to the classroom, and she would often repeat, even though it was probably not a lot she could do, she'd repeat the words that became so embedded in my heart. One nation with liberty and justice for all. And as I thought about that and the words that she called black people, colored people back then, that's the word the NAACP used, and their name. She told us that they weren't being treated fairly. Most of us did nothing, but it meant a lot to me. I gathered myself up and graduated from high school, but in 1954, I was 1 year from graduating, and Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King founded what we know as America's Civil Rights Movement. A man who faced so many obstacles, members of his own congregation, and African American ministers who didn't have his.
All right, that's part of the message that Morris Dees, the civil rights lawyer, a veteran civil rights lawyer, and co-founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Let's also remember he founded that important organization in concert with, of course, civil rights leader, the late Julian Bond. And they co-founded the Southern Poverty Law Center, which today is the preeminent organization in the nation that documents hate and so forth. Okay, Sheila Vincent said we can't hear the speech of the conversation. Yeah, I think we had some audio issues that's me recording the Facebook Live yesterday. So we're trying to get that excerpt from there. But Morris Dees was talking just about America's quest for diversity and inclusion and the importance of that, the sacrifice that he has made. And you got to give him credit in terms of just being able to sacrifice a lot to go after the Ku Klux Klan. And in fact, he successfully sued and was able to bankrupt the United Klan Alliance Organization of America and force them to sell their property after he succeeded in almost a $7 million settlement. And that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage for a man to be so committed to ensuring civil rights and equality. And honestly, today, you will not find that many Morris Dees. You will not find that many lawyers who would commit to that level to that level of really addressing equality. For the most part, I think I can say this with some authority that, there are lawyers who just walk away. They don't want to touch that. No, they don't want to touch that. They just want to go straight to Wall Street and make all the money. I mean, that's fine. I'm not saying you should not do that. But when you think about all the lawyers that we have, when you think about, those that work for corporations and Wall Street and so forth, and then you think about the Morris Dees of the world, you definitely think about the weight of history and the role that Morris Dees has been able to play in terms of the work that he's been able to do, using the law for public good, using the law to ensure equality, using the law to go after hate, and then basically succeed in some cases where he successfully brought lawsuits and was able to bankrupt. We've not had any other civil rights lawyer or any other case, if you will, perhaps in the history of the battle with the Ku Klux Klan in this nation, of any kind of case that has successfully or succeeded in bankrupting the Ku Klux Klan. And Morris Dees was able to do that, and in many respects, because, he was committed to this task, and he was a man who wasn't afraid to address a lot of things that were going on, and he was not afraid to take on what some of us would not take. He tackled civil rights, he tackled inequality head on, and he tackled civil rights head on and was able to, able to get people to pay attention. He got the nation's attention. He got the Ku Klux Klan's attention. And he was able to really, put them in their place. And there are very few lawyers, whose name you'll mention. But with Morris Dees, and you mention his name, in fact, I'm sure that there is fear in the clan movement because they know his record of what he was able to do. But again, this shows his commitment to civil rights, his commitment to equality. And yesterday at the lunch meeting with him, I was sitting next to a former school teacher who was sharing with me, and we're talking, and just talking about what Morris Dees has been able to do, and we talked about just the ideal, the concept of race being an artificial construct. That in fact, perhaps color is more of a consciousness than maybe race is more of a consciousness than even a color of your skin. Because I think Morris Dees has done a lot for the black race. He's done a lot to address equality. Has done a lot to advance civil rights than many black lawyers have been able to do. Think about it. And that is, that's a feather in his cap. And I think that is something that is significant on many levels because, he dedicated his entire life. This is his mission. This is almost like a ministry for him. And, there are few lawyers who would remember, who went at great lengths to ensure equality. Of course, we think about Charles Hamilton Houston, former dean of Howard University. We think about Justice Thurgood Marshall and so forth, and the men and women of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund back in the 60s and the 50s who fought to ensure, of course, the result that came out of Brown v. Board of Education and so forth. But even down through the years, there are a few lawyers we can remember, who've used and sacrificed all that they could and used their power, used their resource to ensure equality. And today what we have, that kind of fight is very rare. We have a lot of legal organizations. We have the Wolverine Bar, the so-and-so Detroit Bar. We have the McNichols Bar Association. We have the Woodward Bar Association. I'm creating names now, but you know where I'm going with this. We have a lot of legal organizations, But for the most part, now I'm not going to paint a broad brush, though, but for the most part, there are organizations that only exist in name. Do they have a mission like a Morris Dees mission? No, they do not. And if let's even bring it home to Detroit here, the challenges that the city faces, right? Lots of challenges, foreclosure crisis, you name it. The economic challenges and so forth. And in most cases, despite this city's history, despite all the organizations you have in this city, there are only few that are willing to speak. There are only few lawyers that will put their quote-unquote neck on the line, or their name, their reputation on the line. And, I've had conversations with some lawyers who basically they're timid. They're afraid to speak out. They're afraid to speak out. I'm not going to name names, but I've had conversations with lawyers who express legitimate discontent. I'm not happy with what is going on. I said, well, you can speak out, but they will not speak out because they feel like maybe they have a lot to lose. But I think if we apply the courage of Morris Dees in terms of what he's been able to do, I think you'll find very few in Detroit who have that kind of courage, who are willing to stand up and speak up regardless of what the status quo says and fight for equality. And I think for the most part, most organizations or legal organizations that we have only exist in name. And you can only define them by the kinds of social activities that they have, their annual dinners, their annual galas. And, you know where I'm going with this. We go to all sorts of galas throughout the year, especially when you're plugged in. Gala upon gala upon gala upon gala, and that's it. The same people you see around. No significant development taking place, but just how great and wonderful things have been for the last 12 months. And we look forward to a more social and wonderful year the following year. That's all we see.